What the? What the hell are you? Why would you do this to us? We were just doing what we were told, man!
I'm letting you live, so you can deliver a message to your master for me. Tell him, the Black Swordsman is here.
The Black Swordsman? What? That's not even a sword! That's a lamp leg!
Fine then, tell him the Black Swordsman with a lamp leg instead of an actual sword is here.
Okay, is that all I tell my master?
Also, you're going to tell this master of yours that my scar is blue.
Okay, is that all? Can I go?
And one more thing. One more very important thing you must tell your master, you hear?
Okay, this is getting weird. I don't feel like this is Mercy anymore.
Dun, 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 dun. Put your glasses on.
Can I go deliver this message now?
Yes, you can deliver this message now.
Oh god, how am I gonna explain this to the boss?
Bleaker fluid, the most normal drink of all time.
Okay, just gotta dial the number of the boss and,
Stalling! 20 minutes later.
Okay. Wait. Let me get this straight. He's the Black Swordsman with lamp legs rather than a sword. He has a blue scar, and he's telling me to put my glasses on? Talk about a budget costume! These heroes nowadays don't have any creativity.
He's here. Kill him!
Greetings, comrades, and hello, everyone. I'm Quinn866. Figured I'd open up with little skits before my signature channel intro because, hey, I might as well put more stuff to add to the overly long intro tradition. Welcome to the Anime Memories Retrospective. As I've stated before, this is a retrospective, so it is encouraged that you watch the other videos, but it's not required. I would also like to apologize to any of those cosplayers in the comments that are like, "Your Guts cosplay sucks!" Yes, I know it sucks. I'm on a budget. Don't judge me. So far in this retrospective, we have covered Wild Arms Twilight Venom, and how I said it was a really big mixed bag. I don't really think I need to go into too much more detail about that. I covered why Trigun holds up pretty well to this day despite its, age, and, given the fact that, Trigun is pretty old. I also covered why I think Cardcaptor Sakura is a magical girl anime you shouldn't just bind together with other overgeneralizations, nor do I feel you should overgeneralize on anything anyways, and that even includes Sailor Moon, which I covered season 1, and I said it was definitely my least favorite, but I saw the innovation and I saw the foundation of what it stood for magical girls and anime in America. It just obviously is not my favorite season. Then I covered Hellsing, and why I think Hellsing Classic is a better horror entry than the obviously much more faithful to the manga, and the much more action-driven and well-animated Hellsing Ultimate, which I was going to cover, but I don't think I can cram that in, considering I had already been scripting the Berserk video, what I'm doing right now, and Hellsing Ultimate would take a bit longer for me to describe. And finally, I covered the very first half of the Sailor Moon arc, the Makaichi arc. It obviously has 2 discs, so I gotta, go back and watch the other disc, because I gotta do the Black Moon Clan arc. But I will do that after Halloween, since Berserk comes first. This title is labeled Berserk, therefore it is about Berserk. And finally, I covered High School DxD Season 1, and why I said it was the first bad anime of this retrospective. Now, don't get me wrong, DxD Season 1 is still enjoyable for people who like it. I'm just not one of those people. Now, I definitely do like Season 2 and beyond, but Season 1 was a really rugged start for this anime, especially considering this is a harem anime. Ugh, I hate it when that happens. If you notice that last clip, my video froze up at the start, my camera does that a lot, and I have no clue why. So, if you see that, just know it's out of my control. But, like I said, this is not about all the other videos. If you want to watch and know more about them, then watch those videos. This video is all about Berserk, and I'm covering the entirety of it too. The manga, if I had the physical copy, and I'm also covering all 3 anime adaptations. Yes, I'm including the 1997 original, the 2016, which a lot of people rag on because of the animation, but I think it's still pretty good, and the Golden Age arc movies, which retell most of, well, actually, technically speaking, the entirety of the 1997 anime, but it also updates it with newer animation and a few other things to make the story just a little bit more cohesive. Oh, Berserk. What can I say about Berserk that hasn't already been said? Well, I could talk about the glorious main character Guts and why he's one of the best protagonists in any series I've ever seen written. Not just in anime, but in storytelling in general. And if you want a really good video going into why, watch Nux Taku's No One Understands Guts video. Love the content, Nux, by the way. Keep up the great work. Absolutely amazing content. However, as much as I love Nux Taku, I'm not here to talk about his video. I'm making my own video on Berserk, so let's get back to that. Being 100% legit here, people, I really don't know what to say about Berserk that hasn't already been said, or stuff that fans haven't already heard. I mean, I know it's overrated, and it's absolutely, heavily regarded by the fanbase as a perfect story, but it really is. I mean, I could talk about how the cast of characters are all really enjoyable regardless of how good or evil they are. I could talk about that sick and absolutely wicked ending to the 1997 anime. I could talk about the brutal and grotesque imagery. I could also talk about, despite the Golden Age arc movies having a really split, mixed bag reception amongst the fanbase, did at least end things off a little bit better by answering some questions the original anime didn't. I still wasn't happy, but still. And I could go on a long-winded, angry rant about the 2016 adaptation's animation being frankly horrifying and even more gruesome than some of the imagery it depicts at times. I still like 2016 adaptation, but even so. Yes, I did just say I do enjoy the 2016 anime adaptation. I've mentioned before on one of my previous videos that animation alone doesn't ruin a series, but we'll get to that in the animation section. But since we're in the overly long intro section, I want to point out something new I haven't usually brought up in these sections. Berserk has multiple openings, or intros, and one thing I want to say Berserk really got right was, in my opinion, the intros got better with each one. Opening of the 1997 anime is great! I mean, okay, it's a little bit dated by today's standards, but at the time, this would have been a sick intro. I mean, okay, yeah, it still mainly just has shots of Guts, our main character, and the lyrics having English, like, put your grosses on, can take away from the immersion a bit.
So put your glasses on.
However, to be fair, that kind of was the norm back then with anime being localized in America. So I'm willing to take it, and it's included and kind of started up a little bit of a joke and a meme amongst the fanbase for comedy, so I like that. Keep in mind, this was 1997. Okay, granted, Sailor Moon theoretically is better since it shows off the other characters, the villains and whatnot, but this intro would definitely stand out, and in my opinion, as a product of 1997, that would stand out in a good way. Then, we get the first season's opening of the 2016 adaptation, and it is even better! Okay, again, the CGI animation's a little bit iffy, but still, people, this music, the visuals, it's got this angry yet sorrowful vibe, and it fits so well. It nails the atmosphere of what Guts felt at this point, and probably what we felt waiting for the story to continue since the 1997 anime ended on such a depressing, hopeless note. However, even though there is a lot of sorrow and anger in this intro, there is a little bit of hope. Again, it nails this intro and tops the original intro, which was a lot happier, which kind of didn't fit by the end. And finally, we get the third intro, which is the one that plays during the second season of the 2016 adaptation, and it is fantastic. Amazing instrumentation, not too much CGI animation that's really jank, and best of all, it nails the atmosphere once again. That's one thing I think the first intro kinda did a bit weirdly. Tell Me Why is a good song and it fits for the fights of the Golden Age arc, but it really didn't fit for the ending of the Golden Age arc. However, these intro musics, both visually and even just in the music, fit. I mean, it's still got a sorrowful vibe, however, there's a lot more hope to it, and the anger has kind of dissipated a bit. There still is anger, but there's more hope in this intro, showing what Guts is going through and how he has more resources to further his goals. This is a rare case of the openings getting better as the series goes on. I mean, Fullmetal Alchemist 03 you can subjectively say that for, based on opinions. However, Brotherhood's openings kinda zigzagged a little bit, with the last one being my least favorite in Brotherhood's. And even in other series I've covered before, like Cardcaptor Sakura, I felt like the first opening, Catch Me If You Can, was really good musically and visually. It's the best visually. And then the second animation, I don't remember the name of it because it's Japanese. The second opening, Toguro Abakete, I don't remember how it's pronounced, I feel like was better musically, however, the animation was a bit more disappointing. And finally, the third intro, Platinum, was my least favorite, both visually and musically, but it was still good. Though, in this case, Berserk's intros managed to top each other each one. Now, granted, there is, some, musical preference in it, and again, it's purely subjective. It's all about opinion. However, in my opinion, they did really good, and they topped each intro well enough for each new one to be considered better by some margin of logic. Even if you can disagree, I do think there is logical reason to believe that. And it goes both ways. Now, let us start with the characters.
Go away!
Jeez, wow. Already starting really tough because the characters of Berserk are literally great. They're all amazing. Okay, they're not all likable. So many of them are hateable, but they're enjoyable because they're hateable. But, this is difficult. I'm going on this completely unscripted because the characters, I don't really know what to say without just kissing up to the fans or nitpicking and seeming like an absolute stickler. So, I guess rather than describing how I feel about the characters, since I just like them all. I love a lot of them, and there's no character I outright dislike. I mean, there's characters obviously I want to see get it, but all the characters are enjoyable and they do what they're supposed to, and they do it amazingly. Starting with the glorious Guts, who might just be the best protagonist I've ever seen written into any piece of storytelling ever told. Now, granted, there are still characters I do love just as much as Guts, but he's up there. He starts out the series as just kind of this, wannabe fighter. He fights because he enjoys it, gets the money, and just lives to see the next day, as he puts it. However, thing after thing happens when getting some allies and starting to find his place in life after abandoning the fights with his abusive father, Gambino, and eventually he starts fighting for a more honorable cause alongside Griffith. More info to come. However, thing after thing happens, and event after event occurs, causing Guts to literally shred almost any dignity he had, but in the process, he grasps one of the ultimate powers of humanity. Guts firmly takes hold of his will to fight. Against all odds, against fate, and against destiny, he will keep fighting until he can finally reach the satisfaction that he should have as a human. It's a really compelling story and a great transformation of a character arc. My only big gripe is, well, we don't really get to see enough of Guts' transformation in the 1997 anime. Literally, we only get to see it during the very first episode, which takes place in the future. I mean, it's nice that we get to see more of Guts in his later Black Swordsman phase in the 2016 anime and obviously in the manga, but still, I kinda wished I saw him more in the original anime this way. Would have been cool, but still, I digress. Casca is the female lead, and she is a freaking badass. Another great, strong female character, much like how I complimented Integra in Hellsing Classic. Casca is a badass sword fighter in the Golden Age arc, very no-nonsense, takes her duties seriously, does things with effective ease. However, at the end of the series, she undergoes a massive transformation due to trauma, and literally becomes a different person by the end of it. However, what you probably want me to talk about is Griffith, since really he is the character that everyone talks about apart from Guts and Casca. Griffith. Oh boy, Griffith. Blinker fluid, the most normal drink of all time.
What do you mean by normal?
Damn it, Gene, shut up! Griffith is a character from commoner origins. He starts out as just kind of, a mentor figure to Guts, who beats him in a duel, forcing and in a weird way convincing Guts to join his mercenary group, the Band of the Hawk. Their whole goal is to make it into royalty so they can end the 100-long-year war that's been going on in the Golden Age arc. So they do battle after battle, overcoming foe after foe, with much skill, strategy, and a little bit of luck, and manage to get into the royal family, and are respected for their deeds, helping, even if they are from commoner origins, they prove they were useful and they were worthy. Griffith at this point has nearly everything he wants, but Guts, seeing Griffith's conviction, as well as Griffith achieving his dream, wants to go on his own way to achieve his own dream. Guts leaving the Band of the Hawk affects Griffith a lot emotionally and mentally, so the two will have a rematch duel where Guts can win back his freedom. However, Griffith unexpectedly sees Guts wins when Guts manages to break his sword, allowing Guts to walk away and effectively leave the Band of the Hawk. This really shows a lot about Griffith and how he values Guts, not just as another means to furthering his goals, but he viewed him as something more than that, a friend, an ally, and losing him definitely struck him the wrong way. Then, Griffith does some really shady stuff like coming on to the princess, trying to make his way to the throne of the king, but this goes a little bit out of hand, and by a little bit I mean a lot out of hand, and let's just say he kinda gets captured for it. The Band of the Hawk and even Guts try to rescue Griffith after his torture, and they manage to get him out. However, he's clearly not what he used to be. Griffith, as they're escaping, makes it to a lake, where the red Bayelet necklace around his neck suddenly awakens and reveals itself as a demonic charm that summons the demons, thus bringing forth their king. And this is where Griffith went under a huge transformation. During the event and the ultimate climax of the Golden Age arc, the Eclipse, the event that so many people talk about and so many people mention when it comes to absolutely mind-boggling and insane endings in not just anime, but in storytelling in general. Griffith, despite completely being able to deny the request of becoming the new demon king of the God Hand, which are the apostles, he becomes their apostle, making him reborn as Femto, and effectively doing some of the most unforgivable things in anime we've ever seen. Add that all together, and we have a great antagonist. I mean, obviously, it's really sad that it ended the way it did for the 1997 anime, and we didn't get anything animated until the 2016 anime. Now, granted, you could still read the manga, but I'm sure a lot of people would have loved to see certain things in the manga get animated, and we haven't quite gotten that, sadly to say. At least for the majority of the fans' opinions, and even mine to some extent. But this is what makes Griffith not only a really interesting character, but it's also what makes him an effective villain. I mean, sure, it came out of nowhere. Griffith became the villain at the very end, but it was so compelling and it just hits you. And I have never thought I'd say it, but this is a last-minute villain done beautifully. It's so evil, as a villain should be, and it just nails what Berserk is all about. And yes, I know, Griffith is really controversial, some of the things he did, but again, this is, during the Golden Age arc, where there's, warriors and stuff, and this is like back when like Vikings would fight and all that jazz, or at least around that kind of time period, and that's what kind of makes this interesting, considering back then, that kind of stuff was, hard to say, a bit of the norm. I mean, Vikings, barbarians, warriors, and even people out there back in those days did shady stuff. Even royalty in, like, the old medieval-y days, if this is what you can call, did some really bad stuff behind the backs of the public, and they'd get away with it because they're royalty. And I mean, I know that's really, really sinister and a massive assumption, since I don't know what royalty is really like, but documentally, and even to an extent with some historic examples, you can say that. It doesn't forgive it at all, but it is really interesting to analyze. The other characters across every different adaptation of Berserk are all really good and maintain a fair, consistent rate of quality, with none of them being outright badly written characters in my eyes. Like the other members of the Band of the Hawk in the Golden Age arc in 1997 are entertaining and add more to the other characters. The demons, like the Count in the 2016 adaptation, or Nosferatu Zod in the 1997 anime, and the Golden Age arc movies, are good and work as early series threats. Though, to go on a quick side tangent here, I'm actually not really that, well, impressed by how they handled the demons. I mean, I do like it how we don't have a demon fight every single episode, but I feel like demons, especially in the Golden Age arc and 1997 anime, were more treated like rare one-off encounters, rather than a common thing. And okay, that makes sense, but I really would have liked more demon fights, especially in the 1997 anime with its admittedly charming cel-shaded animation. Sure, it's old, but it's pretty darn entertaining. Again, I know it's, more about humans and humanity and Berserk and all that jazz, but the demons really bring out the Berserk in humans, and, well, I just kind of wanted more demon fights. Am I the only one who wanted that? I just want to ask. Or, I mean, I know, again, I'm going on a massive side tangent here, but I really do kind of think we needed more demon fights, especially with the Apostles and the God Hand, which I'm getting into right now. The God Hand are villains that appear at the very end of the Golden Age arc and 1997 anime to turn Griffith into Femto. Now, I said Griffith is a good example of a last-minute villain done right, and to an extent the God Hand are too, though we don't really get to know much about the God Hand members, whether it be Slan, Ubik, Conrad, or Void. They're just kind of there to be the characters that transform Griffith into Femto, which is fine, but again, kind of doesn't really work. But at the end of the day, they're there to enhance Griffith's transformation, so I'm all fine with it. And even the characters like that join Guts' party in 2016 anime are entertaining and unleash sides of Guts that we don't really see that often, so I like it. All in all, there's no bad characters in Berserk, at least no badly written ones in my eyes. Again, there are characters with things I like and don't like, but Berserk's kind of supposed to be about that. Berserk is a giant anime about black and white thinking versus gray thinking. And, I mean, obviously, that goes for Guts and Griffith, but it goes even beyond that in the other characters. Not just, Casca and the other members of the Band of the Hawk and Guts' party. Even the side characters that, are in the villages do kind of have this going for them, and I really liked it about the characters. But now let's move on to the animation, and this is going to be a big one considering I'm covering all 3 series in that subject. Alright, time for the main thing I really want to cover in this review, as well as the hardest thing. I've heard everyone say no matter what adaptation you watch, whether it be the original 1997 anime, the Golden Age arc movies, or, of course, the infamous 2016 anime adaptation, that the animation just all across the board ranges from questionable to bad. Now, okay, I know there are times where the animation can be outright horrifying, but I wouldn't say that's, in quotation marks, bad. Once again, in quotation marks. Yeah, I feel like people tend to forget, or maybe if they don't really forget, they just don't really admit, or maybe they look past the fact that Berserk's not supposed to be a series that looks like overly fantastic. If they made, beautiful scenery and landscape for every single shot, it would kind of go against the feeling of Berserk. Now, okay, I understand, doing that, for the more calm scenes and stuff like that. But in the battle scenes and with the villains and evil characters, making the animation kind of jittery, strangely enough, fits. Now, okay, granted, it's still really, really hard to defend because the CGI of the 2016 animation is very questionable. It's clearly used for budgeting, much like my Guts cosplay I got here that is just literally a hoodie, a lamp leg, and a cape, which I took off because it was a little bit hard to move around. But, and keep in mind, I also had to draw a scar on my face with a blue eye, but real talk, people, budget-wise, it's fine. It's not the best thing ever. The animation is questionable a lot of the time, and there are even some shots that, even with the whole it's not supposed to look good argument I make, doesn't cover. But overall, this series does fit with that. Now, does it excuse the fact that it's obviously lazy CGI? No, it is actually really bad, especially considering this is 2016. Now, it looks better than something like Jimmy Neutron, for sure, but it still feels just as unsettling. So regardless of it looking better than something like Jimmy Neutron, it still being the same in terms of unsettling doesn't help it very well. But even then, there are still some good motion shots, and even some scenes that do look pretty good, regardless of the animation being a very, very inconsistent mess a lot of the time. Most people prefer the 1997 animation because it's understandably old, so it's going to have weird shots like this over-the-top walk/charge at Guts from Samson. Even then, though, there are still some questionable decisions. Like, obviously, there are still some good shots and some really beautiful, still frames, but a few of the animation bits can be questionable. I mean, obviously, there's gonna be, and even then, there's actually budgeting here. That's not something I hear people bring up. Like, for instance, this scene is just Guts repeating the same 2 slash animation. It's cool looking, but it's obviously just 2 slashes. And this scene here with the flail stretching is just weird. Again, not bad, but it definitely does show. However, in things like the Golden Age arc, stuff like the lighting and the shadows, especially during the calmer scenes, are actually pretty good, even if facial features can be a bit wonky at times. Overall, the animation across every series is weird, but good for the most part. Yes, even the 2016 animation has some really questionable decisions, but I understand what they may have been trying to go for. Berserk's not a series that wants you to feel at ease. Berserk is something that wants you to feel on edge and tense constantly. The series wants you to feel tense. They want you to feel worry. They want you to feel fear. And having stiff animation actually manages to really make the demons all that more fearful. Maybe that's why they wait until the 2016 animation or until new technology is released to show more demons, apart from the first one in episode 1 of the 1997 anime, since this kind of animation makes the demons all the more scary. Okay, I'll admit, that is a bit of a stretch. However, I can see that being a logical argument. Again, Berserk wants you to really be afraid of these monsters, given the fact that Guts is, real talk, the only one who can reliably stand up to them, and making them look all stiff and giving them these really, jagged animations can contribute to the fear. It doesn't change the fact that it's lazy in budget, but I can see that being a method of masquerading it. Overall, the animation is okay, but questionable. And really, that's fine though. The animation doesn't ruin the series for me. It doesn't ruin any of the anime adaptations, and it certainly isn't a problem that affects the manga, since the manga, you don't have pages that are animated on books. Let's be real here.
I'm coming, Casca.
Now, if the animation was really inconsistent over every single adaptation, I understand that can turn fans off, so they kind of need to make something else consistent to balance it out, and the audio thankfully delivers. No matter which adaptation you listen to, the music is amazing. Now, there are still some things about the music that does confuse me. It's mostly ironically present within the original anime's music. Now, I love the music. I love it. The original anime's music is the best one, no question. However, that didn't stop it from a few questionable decisions, like only having 11 tracks. And maybe 15 if you include full versions of the intro/ending, and maybe instrumentals or whatever, but that goes against the point. But another questionable decision is that, yes, 11 songs isn't that much. However, for an early anime, I understand this. But at the same time, why are so many of the songs so long? Like, no joke, Berserk anime's, original soundtrack is good, but some of the tracks themselves are long. Like, obviously, the intro theme isn't that long. It goes on for a minute. And there's obviously, like, I think there's, like, a full version of the song that's whatever. My point is, like, some songs, like, go on for roughly about maybe 3 minutes, which isn't too long for a song, and it's actually pretty average. Some go on for 5 minutes, which is definitely a bit longer. And again, for instrumental parts and then building up to the vocals, that makes sense. And then we get a song like Murder, track 5, that goes on for 9 minutes long. And like, that's like nearly as long as Freebird by Leonard Skinnerd, or Lynyrd Skynyrd. I don't know his name, whatever. But like, yeah, that is a long song, and most of it's just, atmospheric sounds, and, it sounds cool for, the demon world and the eclipse scene, but the fact the song goes on for 9 minutes long is kind of crazy. But all in all, even with the questionable decisions of making some tracks a bit longer at the cost of only 11 tracks to boot, is still okay. And the new animes and the Golden Age movies have appropriately fitting music. Real talk though, I don't want anyone to say anything else here. The music is amazing. It's not my personal favorite anime soundtrack of all time, especially for the 1997 anime. There's just not enough there. However, it is really good, and it stands out really well. And some tracks I would rate up there in my top 10, not even top 10, because that's not fair, but my top 100 individual anime tracks, Berserk would make quite a few of that list in the top 100 anime tracks I've listed, but I haven't made a list for that, so that's not exactly conclusive, nor do I know which ones I put up there at this moment. But yeah, the soundtrack is fantastic, and something that did remain really consistent across every adaptation. Now with that said, let's talk about the story.
Griffin!
Okie dokie. Now it's time for the story. That glorious story. Now, with an anime as big as this, with a manga that only recently got finished after the author, Kentaro Miura, I'm sorry if I did not pronounce that right, I'm not Japanese, but I want to give a moment of prayer for the author that gave us this amazing story and recently passed away. Anyways, now I want to say right now that Berserk's manga didn't exactly end how it was intended given he passed away, but Kentaro Miura, from what I've heard, did give some manuscripts or some notes to the rest of the team before he died to finish off the series where it was. And they did, releasing chapter 364 and gave this series an end. Maybe not the intended ending that Miura originally had written when he started the series, but it is an ending that works and it is an ending that's good. But that's only in the manga. However, given how that's the manga and most of the story in the manga hasn't been animated, we'll start with the first anime adaptation, the 1997 one. I held it upside down by accident, god dingus. And boy, do I have a major nitpick with the 1997 anime. Now, the 1997 anime story is still really good, and I still love it. I mean, I still love Berserk's story as a whole, and that includes those other adaptations in the manga. However, the pacing and the way it was released kind of confused me. This is gonna sound weird, but watch the first episode last. I mentioned this before that the first episode takes place in the future, showing Guts after his transformation at the Eclipse, which was the final episode, and where we got a really good opening fight. However, the opening episode chronologically comes place after the stuff that takes before, and that's a bit confusing, as well as the last episode ending really quickly. Now, it's to nail the drama, yes, but it doesn't quite feel right for an ending that nails the drama. Maybe it's because of the screen time or the animation at the time, but when I saw episode 25, and I had forgotten about episode 1, because I was just, investing myself in the rest of the story, I was like, that's it? But I realized, when I went back to the first episode, oh, now I see. So, if you've already watched Berserk, I understand that problem. But if you want to show Berserk to other people, show them the first episode last. It still doesn't change, the rushed ending of episode 25, but seeing it chronologically could help new people or someone you're just trying to show it to take it better, since the first episode coming afterwards really does help nail the drama, as well as not ending it on quite a rush note. It's still just as dramatic, though. Also, I'm going to be talking about the story as a whole, the entire series, animes and manga. I'll group stuff together like the Golden Age arc and the 1997 anime, but I'll say any differences when need be, or if there's any ones that need pointed out. The first episode gloriously starts out with a great action scene, which again works better as a last episode. Then it goes into a massive flashback arc showing why Guts was just a soldier, why he worked under Griffith, why Griffith became the way he did, and we get to see it all play out in front of us. We see Guts, again, like I mentioned in the character's description, was really just a warrior fighting because, well, he enjoyed fighting, and he did it to escape his abusive father Gambino. However, Griffith manages to both force and convince Guts to join his dream in making their way up the ladder to royalty so they can, change the 100-year war going on. They have good fights like Nosferatu Zod and the other generals of opposing armies, and basically all the other stuff you can imagine. In a weird way, you can basically say the Golden Age arc is really just one giant action sequence. Now, yes, there are moments of character development in silence, like in the villages or at the camps, but it is actually really intriguing at the end of the day. Midway through, we have a flashback episode showing Casca's backstory, as well as showing that Griffith had actually gotten sexually used by some lord dude. Griffith later reveals that he intentionally let himself be raped by this lord, so years later, when he amassed his resources, he could kill this lord under the justification of beating him for the crime that he committed against him. Now, Griffith is pretty sympathetic in this regard, because yes, even though he intentionally let himself be raped so he'd have justification for this fight, he did still have to suffer through it, and that is definitely not a good sign. But then Guts leaves, affecting Griffith emotionally, and he gets captured and tortured. Then, when Guts teams up with the Band of the Hawk one final time for a mission to save Griffith, The Crimson Baylet awakens, bringing forth the God Hand and the other demon apostles, who trick Griffith into accepting the deal to becoming their 5th king.
Our progeny, our newest kinsmen, our wing of darkness. Arise, Femto.
Then, after Femto, the newly reborn demonic Griffith awakens in front of Guts, who's being pinned down by the other hordes of demons, by the way. Femto does one of the most unforgivable acts ever animated into anything I've ever seen. I can't show all of it, but I'll just show a few clips around it. What the hey? What the hey? I mean, holy frick-a-frag. That's just... damn. Here is Guts, still angrily trying to fight, even though it's a completely hopeless situation. And even then, Casca is still suffering even more so than Guts, and it just shows. This is painful to watch. This is one of the most despair-filled endings I've ever seen in anything ever. It's just hopeless. There's no way for anyone to win or anyone to do what's right. The demons, the God Hand, completely got Griffith, forcing Guts and Casca to nearly die. It's never really explained how Guts and Casca survived the eclipse, at least until the Golden Age arc movies did a better job, but still. But this is where you see what Guts has become. Now, I still think watching the first episode last is what you should do. However, if you did watch the first episode first, the way it was intended like I did, here's where your mind was just blown. I mean, obviously, Guts, was completely different, by the beginning in the Snake Baron fight. But we didn't really know the full extent of why. Here, we see it. We see Guts' main moment that caused him to transform. And that is it. Literally, that is the very last episode of the 1997 anime, and it absolutely feels devastating. We see Griffith, who is a character who started as the best, become the worst. We saw Casca, a character who you really sympathized with, get used in the worst way. And we see Guts, a character who at the start was just really just a fighter, who by the middle series became much more normal, wanting to live his own life for his own dreams. But seeing everything he cared for and everyone he was with get reduced to this caused his transformation. This is what caused Guts to transform. This is why he is the way he is. This is who he has become. And this is why Guts went Berserk. As the title of the series says. This nails it. But again, I'm not really a fan of the episode ending so quickly. But rather than getting a new episode preview at the very end, we get a scene of Guts. A-OK, which they don't really, again, show how Guts or Casca got out of the cliffs alive until the Golden Age arc movies. However, it is nice to see Guts alive, but we see he's far from okay, mentally speaking. He got a new arm, his eye might not ever open again, but he is fine physically. But mentally, he's not stopping until he delivers the justice or gains the satisfaction he deems fit. And that is where both the 1997 anime and the Golden Age arc ends. Now, the Golden Age arc gives us a little bit more to work with, where we see the Skull Knight, who will give Guts his future power, and the Berserker armor later on, as well as we get to see how he and Casca survived the eclipse. But even then, it still ends just a little bit too quickly in the Golden Age arc. It ends much better. It ends much better than the 1997 anime, but still. And real talk, the rest of the 2016 anime is not something I want to cover because you really have to watch it for yourself. I liked how we got way more demon fights in the 2016 anime, and that was really, really good. And there are, again, the villains are a little bit, especially that priest dude Mosgus was, but he worked because he was, but at the end of the day, the Berserk anime did not fully adapt the manga story. So how does the manga end? For those who don't know, the 2016 anime ended right after the Ogre arc, where Guts manages to kill Salon. It's not conclusive whether or not this is actually her death, but I like to believe it is, since Guts would have a significant advantage and the God Hand would be massively set back. So I do believe that this theoretically could be Salon's death. Even for astral form remains, he definitely killed a physical body, thus preventing her from manifesting again. It all ends with the witch girl getting accepted and him obtaining the Berserker armor for the first time. Okay, now, before we talk about the actual ending, the one we get in the manga that ends off the entire series, I want to mention before what I thought was going to happen, and what I believe would have happened if Kentaro had lived longer. Again, this is purely hypothetical, but here's how I would have ended the series. Given the fact that since then, none of the new members of the Hawk, from what I've read, or the other God Hand members die, except for maybe Slan. Again, we don't know for sure if that's her death, but here's how I would have ended the series. I would have had another character get introduced after the death of Slan, because that theoretically in that scene of 2000 could have been her death. Another character they meet has a Crimson Baylet, and they obviously, don't know what it's about. But Guts, deciding him not wanting to make the same mistake twice like Griffith did, manages to convince this person to use the Crimson Baylet to draw out the God Hand during the next time they appear. However, until then, they, prepare all these resources and a means to when the God Hand appears during the next eclipse, they can make them vulnerable, and they'll bring enough humans to overpower the demons. And basically how I imagine it would go is a giant eclipse where the demons, ironically, are the ones fighting. However, of course, the demons are not, overpowered. They're outnumbered, but they're not overpowered. But Guts managing to make the God Hand vulnerable by baiting them with a Crimson Baylet for someone that would want to take Slan's place would manage to, again, make them vulnerable, and the humans, now seeing that the God Hand is a fraud, by that token Griffith / Femto, we'd have basically an eclipse where the humans are able to fight back and manage to push things back. I understand a lot of people would have wanted individual fights with, the characters like the God Hand members and the new Band of the Hawk that Griffith created when he was reborn as Femto, which actually Nosferatu Zod became one of the new members of the Band of the Hawk. And I would have liked to see a rematch with him and Guts before he fights Femto / Griffith. However, that obviously could not be written in a single chapter, and they wanted to end the series as quickly as possible without diverging from Kentaro's vision, so they had to end the series differently in the manga. And for what we got, I'm satisfied. It's obviously not what I personally would have wanted or thought, but it is still a good ending for what we got in the manga. Throughout the entirety of Berserk, Guts always blamed Griffith for what happened and everything that was lost, since he chose to make the sacrifice. Casca eventually starts to regain her sanity, and by the end, her and Guts have a child, which is just called the Moonlit Child in some translations. However, it's later revealed that the Moonlit Child, under the full moon, slowly transforms into Griffith, who's slipping away from Femto's grasp. It's revealed that Griffith is not Femto. Here's the irony. Throughout the entirety of the series, Griffith never really let on a lot about himself. Even to his allies during the Golden Age arc, Griffith never really let on a lot about himself. His facial expressions, his thoughts, and even his actions were really a big mystery. However, when Guts sees the Moonlit Child manifest into Griffith with his hair changing light, Guts sees this isn't what Griffith wanted. Yes, Griffith did these things as Femto, but Femto is not Griffith. They might have the same body, and Griffith can slip away from time to time into the Moonlit Child. However, Griffith didn't want this. It's shown that he really was tricked, and even if we don't know for sure, we can see Griffith does feel bad. They've said it even in the chapter itself. This body feels emotion. And it shows that Griffith is not Femto, and Guts seeing Griffith shed a single tear, seeing that Griffith didn't want this, causes him to forgive Griffith, knowing that he is not Femto. And that's where it ends. It's a tale of Guts finally forgiving Griffith, seeing the truth. Again, Femto and the rest of the God-Hand and Apostles and New Brand of the Hawk are still raging, but Guts can see Griffith is not Femto. While yes, they might share the same body, and Griffith can, go elsewhere in his astral form to have emotion, we do see that Griffith isn't what he wanted. Even during the scene of him using Casca in the worst way at the end of the 1997 movie and the Golden Age arc, we see his facial expression does not change at all. Nor does it even look like Femto is even enjoying what he's doing, as evil as it is. And this is where we see why. And this is also where the whole logic of Griffith did nothing wrong kind of actually might come into play. Yes, Griffith still did wrong things, and Guts still did wrong things. Everyone does. We're only human. But we do see that Griffith is not the same as Femto. One of them is just the demon. The other one is the human that had the emotions. Femto is Griffith without the emotions and honor. Griffith has that. And seeing that the person he thought became a demon knows and regrets his decision causes Guts to forgive him. Because he knows, even if Femto has mostly control over Griffith, he can see that Griffith did retain his emotions. It's not a very complete ending. I would have loved to see the rest of the Band of the Hawk and the God Hand either get put in their place, sealed off, or whatever. But for an end to Guts' character arc and him finally accepting that Griffith wasn't as inhuman even during his transformation, and that the God Hand really did trick him and control him, is a good ending for both him and Casca. Now, all in all, Berserk is an amazing story. And I've said before that Gun Sword is the perfect anime, but real talk, Gun Sword is not the only perfect series. Just because I love and tried Gun Sword doesn't mean Berserk can't be perfect either. Yes, it does suffer from some flaws, especially during the 1997 anime adaptation, and a lot even during in the 2016 and Golden Age arc movies. Even the manga has quite a few flaws that I won't really divulge into, since I don't want to trigger people. Since, real talk people, I know it's cliche, Berserk is talked about, Berserk is hype. But Berserk is just that good. And that's why I'm giving Berserk, as a series, not just one anime adaptation, not just the manga, as the entire series, I'm giving Berserk a 10 out of 10. Perfect. Like, all the problems I have with it are such small nitpicks that I'd be lying out of my mind if it said it ruined any part of the franchise for me. Now with the manga complete, I'm satisfied. Again, the ending may not be exactly happy, but I've said it before, Berserk's not really supposed to have a happy ending. It's a series called Berserk. I'm not expecting a sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows ending from a series called Berserk. It's not a sad ending, what we got in the manga, but it's a bittersweet ending. It may feel really open-ended, but that's kind of how life goes. And Berserk is a tale of life, thus earning it a 10 out of 10, the perfect score. I know I probably really glossed over a lot of things people really like about Berserk, and this probably isn't the most in-detail review you want to hear, but given the fact that I'm gonna be releasing this on Halloween, and I may have to edit a bit to, get past copyright, so it may not be released on the day of, but I'm gonna try and release this as my Halloween special review. I want to say thank you so much for sticking through this. I know my takes on Berserk might be either really, really cliche or a lot of people disagree with, but I make reviews to explain how I feel about a series. So I'm Quinn866, have a good one, and once again, I need a drink because I spent a long time talking on some of these. Blinker Fluid, the most normal drink of all